Okay, so I've got the threads all tapped 10 thousandths over, and I'm just going to loosen this up and take this out. But I leave this little mandrel in here because what happens now is this receiver, when I leave this in here, that mandrel is a precision ground mandrel, and those sleeves inside are precision ground. So that mandrel is held perfectly concentric to the raceway of this bolt on this action. So I'm going to put it in my lathe now, and I'm going to set you down for just a second. And so now that this is in my lathe, I can see how true the action face is. My guess is that it's between 2 to 4 thousandths out from one side to the other side, which means on a factory gun from Remington, where the barrel meets the recoil lug, those don't line up perfectly parallel so that everything runs true down. And so let me get this set up and I'll come back. Okay, I've got this set up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1/1000th off of the face of this receiver, and we'll see if it touches and trues the entire ring up or if it just hits one side. Got to tighten this up just a little bit. Let's go really slow here. Okay, so you can see there that this action wasn't too bad. I ended up taking 2 thousandths off of that, and it pulled it clean. So now we have a clean and perpendicular action face to meet the recoil lug and the barrel. Okay, so here's a Remington 700 small action that I just got done blueprinting. I've squared the face off, cleaned up the lugs on the inside, as well as chased the threads out 10 thousandths over, so everything is perfectly round and we don't have any oval shaped threads for our new barrel. Now in the vise, or in the lathe here, I've got set up the bolt. We're gonna square this bolt up now, and I have it locked in here in a LeBounty fixture, and I have it on the dial here. This is a half a 10 thousandths indicator, and I have it dialed in to where it's moving just ever so slightly, which is like a quarter quarter 10,000ths running true, which could be just the irregularities in the finish on this bolt. So basically now is what we're going to do is we're going to clean the back of the lugs up on the bolt. We'll clean up the front just a little bit around the nose, make sure that's true. We're going to face off the front of the bolt nose, so we'll do that now. So just real quick here, you can see that I've got both of those lugs trued up. However, on the bolt nose here, you can see that only part of that is getting hit. Reason being is Remington, when they make these bolts, these are a two-piece bolt. Right in this area here is another addition that's added on here, and that's why I try to indicate back here off of the center line of that bolt, and then we have to true the nose up. And so we got quite a bit to take off to actually just even true that up. You can see that it's just barely taken some off there and nothing the rest of the way around, so we'll clean this thing up. So there's 2/1000ths that I just took off, and we still aren't completely cleaned up. Still got this backside here, so we'll finish. Okay, there you have it. So we got the bolt nose all trued up, and the front of the locking lugs, the nose, the outside of the nose, as well as the back of the locking lugs. So now we just need to take some measurements and we'll be ready to start on our barrel. The one other thing that I will do is I have a tool that I am going to make sure that that bolt face on there where all the brass is perfectly perpendicular to the bolt raceways, and I'll clean that up as well. Okay, so as what I have here is I'm going to take and I'm going to true the actual bolt face up. I'm going to make sure that that face where my casing sits is true. So as what I have here is I have a little cutter and a tool that's made by PTG, and is what happens is this little cutter goes in and you put it behind the ejector clip and it sets in there like that. And don't know if you can see it, you probably can't, but it's tucked in behind the ejector clip. And then I have this little device here that goes in, and it's 10/1000ths over. You can see there it's a plus 10/1000ths for Remington. It screws perfectly into my trued action, and it holds this cutter. There's no play in it, and so it'll hold it true against that bolt face. I hook this to a drill and spin it for just 3 seconds is all you're doing is truing that bolt face up, and that's it. So if you look here, there's still a ring in the center, which means the outsides were really high. So the back of your case on your round doesn't sit flush and fit flat against your bolt face. So I got to take it just a little deeper. There we go. So you can see there now that that's all cleaned up, and I'm ready to put all this together in my action and take some dimensions so that I can cut my breech and thread my tenon to get the action fitted to the barrel. Alright, here's a real quick shot. I've got a 6mm barrel made by Krieger. It's a 1 1/8" twist. It's 31" blank, and I've got my indicator set up here on this end. It's on the exterior of the barrel. I've got another indicator that I'm going to put on the inside and actually indicate off of the inside of the barrel itself. I think you get a little bit more accurate reading, but on a 1/2 10,000ths indicator, we got it indicated in pretty good here. It's not really moving. And same thing on the exterior here, over here on the muzzle side. we've got it to where it's not moving either. So dialed in pretty good, and that's basically what you want to be able to start to cut your threads, and then build your tenon here to accept the bolt face. So I'm basically just going to take a few dimensions here. With the recoil lug here, you want to take a dimension to find out what your distances are to your bolt nose, your locking lugs, and your bolt face, and from there you can start building your tenon. Okay, so here we are. I've got my 6mm XC. I've taken some dimensions here on my action and my bolt. This is the distance from where my tenon will start and how long it will need to be. So it's the distance from the front edge of the action face to the recoil lug is 908. To the bolt face inside of the bolt is 894. The bolt nose is 752. This is the recoil lug opening, which was bored over 10 thousandths. It's usually 1.062, but this is 1.075. So it's bored over just a little over 10 thousandths, so we'll make sure we keep that tight. And then this is the bolt nose diameter. So we'll go about 7 thousandths over that, so we have 3.5 thousandths of clearance all the way around the bolt nose inside of the barrel tenon here. So I told you last time that we had the dials on the exterior of the barrel and we had it dialed in really well. I've got this set up now to where, let's see if I can get it where you can see it. This little dial here now is actually sitting right on the barrel inside, and it rides the lands so you can see when it's in a valley and when it's in a groove. And it goes to the same exact point on every groove and every lands. And so that way I know for sure that I'm dialed in right on. So I'm going to start building this tenon and I'll show you what I've done here in a little bit. Okay, let me get this out of the way here, but you can see that I've got my tenon built and I've got it threaded and I have it all ready. I'm going to put it together here so you can see it. But my recoil lug is going to go on. It sits nice and tight up against the shoulder here of the barrel, and there's no play in it. It fits just barely over this. I left this little shoulder here so that the recoil lug sits nice and tight. And then my action threads right on, and if you notice there's no play in it. You want it nice and snug. You don't want it too snug, but you don't want it sloppy either. You want to make sure that everything is nice and tight so that your bolt drops in and everything. So, and then we'll see, you can test to make sure that you built your tenon right and that your bolt should just drop in. So everything is good and we're ready to move on to chambering this barrel. Okay, I got my reamer all set up here. I got a floating pilot on it over here, and I've got a little mark on it here where I'm going to be getting close to where I can start checking headspace. So basically all I'm going to do is keep this oiled up really good, and I'm going to slowly take this in with this resting on the cross slide here. Feeling for any catches or anything to make sure that it's going smooth. And I'll go about 40 thousandths at a time and back it out, clean it up, re-oil it, and continue 40 thousandths over and over and over till we get to our depths, until we have it chambered. Okay, so I've got this chambered down pretty deep, and I've got my go gauge in here. And so I'm going to check it right now to see how our headspace is looking. You do that basically by screwing the receiver on to the barrel, and with that go gauge in there, if I can screw this all the way on and the go gauge closes, then I may be too deep. But if it won't close, then I still have to chamber just a little bit deeper. So we get it in there, we lock it on, and you can see it won't close. So if I just back this off a little bit until it does close. Okay. So right there it's snug and it just drops down. So is what I'm going to do is I have some feeler gauges that I'll put down in this groove, and it'll tell me the thickness of this groove, and that'll tell me how much deeper I need to chamber this for headspace. Okay, so real quick, I just want to show you, once I have it all chambered, the difference of what it is, so that you know whether you're headspaced correctly or not. So on the back of this gauge here, this is a go gauge. Your bolt needs to be able to close when this go gauge is in your chamber. And so you simply put the go gauge in as if it were a cartridge, and you close the bolt and make sure it's locked, and it should drop. And as you can see, this one here, it drops. Now, to make sure you're not too deep so that you have too much headspace, you can take a piece of blue masking tape, painter's tape, and that is 2/1000 of an inch thick. I don't know if you can see that. And that, when you put it in here and you try to close the bolt and lock it in, it doesn't close. So believe it or not, the difference of 2/1000 of an inch will allow it to close and not close. So that just means that I'm under 2/1000 of an inch on headspace, which is good because it means your chamber's nice and tight so that your brass doesn't grow and move as much with each fire. So anyway, that's good. So this action and this barrel are done. I just have to polish the chamber and it's good to go. Okay, so one last video. I kind of got a light on here. I'm hoping it'll focus in there on that chamber, but it's really not focusing in that well, but you can see and get the idea that I've polished it out. Try to get just a little bit of cross hatching with a 400 grit, and then I polish it out with just some what we call green paper, and that just allows it to shine it up. And so anyway, we're all done and we're ready to put this gun together.